Hello everyone. Today ang second na video ng aming RCXRF Book Club, which is about sa book ni William Lane Craig entitled On Guard. Ngayon ay didiscuss natin ang second chapter entitled What Difference Does It Make If God Exists? Ang format sa aming book club discussions is that as their host, ako ang nag-lead ng flow ng discussion. Nag-discuss ako and mention ng certain points na diniscuss ni Dr. Craig sa chapter, and then I ask the participants about specific questions na nasa book na open for discussion. Dahil this is merely a recap video, I will not include here ang kanilang answers, but just give my personal answers sa mga questions na yun when it was asked. What we will do ngayon sa recap ng book club is first, mag-start muna ako with an introduction to show why God's existence matters. Second, we will discuss ang reductio ad absurdum argument by talking about life not having an objective meaning, value, and purpose. If si God ay hindi nag-exist. Third, we will talk about the impossibility of living consistently and happily with an atheistic worldview. Fourth, we will talk about how the Christian worldview gives us a framework on how to live consistently and happily. Introduction. Dr. Craig started the chapter sa pag-share niya ng story niya nung nag-live siya with his wife sa Belgium. Ito raw ang time when the Soviet Union collapsed at ang Iron Curtain ay nag-fall. He shared yung pag-visit niya sa cosmologist na si Andrei Grib. Dr. Craig asked the cosmologist kung bakit maraming taong nag-turn kay God after ng fall ng communism. And ang answer ni Grib is that meron sila sa mathematics na tinatawag na proof by the opposite. Ang ibig sabihin nito is that you can prove na true ang isang bagay by showing na ang opposite nito ay false. And nung time na yon ay they tried Marxist atheism for 70 years and ito ay hindi nag-work. So everybody sa bansa nila thought na ang opposite nito must be true. Ang lament ni Dr. Craig is that sa US ay sobrang used na ang Americans kay God na they take Him for granted. And never nila naisip ang implications if si God ay hindi nag-exist. Ito ang reason kung bakit sa tingin nila na irrelevant si God. Na walang magbago whether God exists or not. And ang sad rito ay this seems true sa atin here as well. So sa chapter na ito, ang intention ni Dr. Craig ay that bago ipakita ang evidence for God's existence, ay ipapakita niya muna kung bakit ang existence ni God ay nagmatter. Kasi if not, then ang tao usually will not care. Ang intention dito ay ipapakita natin ang implications ng atheism para makita natin ang existence ni God ay isang issue na nag-touch sa very core ng ating being at hindi bilang isang ivory tower na senseless philosophizing. Ang proof by opposite na ito ni Professor Grib ay tinatawag ni Dr. Craig bilang isang reductio ad absurdum. Basically, isa itong argument na nag-prove ng isang statement by proving na ang opposite nito ay absurd. Before we start sa pag-discuss ng reductio ad absurdum na ito, let's start muna sa pag-define ng ating terms. 1. How do we define meaning, value, and purpose? Answer. Ang meaning ayon sa book ay may kinalaman sa significance. Ang value naman ay may kinalaman sa good and evil. And ang purpose naman ay nag-refer sa isang goal or reason para sa isang bagay. Number 2. How do we distinguish between subjective and objective? Ang objective naman ay nag-refer sa isang bagay na totoo regardless ng opinion ng isang tao tungkol rito. Ang subjective naman ay isang bagay na nagdepend sa personal taste or opinion ng tao, tulad ng kung ano ang mas masarap na flavor ng isang ice cream. Reductio ad absurdum argument. Ang argument ni Dr. Craig sa reductio ad absurdum is that if si God ay hindi nag-exist, then ang life natin ay walang ultimate meaning, value, and purpose. Ang definition niya kay God ay isang all-powerful and perfectly good na creator ng world na nag-offer sa atin ng eternal life. Tapos ang meaning, value, and purpose, which you have heard, is yung meaning nag-refer sa significance, kung bakit nag-matter yung isang bagay. Ang value ay nag-refer sa good and evil. and right and wrong. And ang purpose ay nag-refer sa isang goal or reason for something. Ang claim ni Dr. Craig is that if walang God, then ang meaning, value, and purpose ng sangkatauhan ay merely illusions. This means na if atheism is true, then whether we like it or not, ang life natin would be objectively meaningless, valueless, and purposeless. It needs to be said na hindi sinasabi ni Dr. Craig ng experience ng atheist ay dull and meaningless, na wala silang personal values, or nag-live sila ng immoral lives, or that wala silang goals para mabuhay. Dr. Craig emphasizes na ang life would be unbearable and unlivable kapag ganun ang beliefs natin. This shows na he distinguishes between the experience of an atheist and ang ontology ng objectivity ng meaning, value, and purpose. This shows na if atheism is true, then though may appearance ng meaning, value, and purpose experience ng isang atheist, at the end of the day ay illusions lang ang mga ito. Ang sabi ni Dr. Craig na if si God ay hindi nag-exist, ay ang man at ang universe will eventually die. Humans, like biological organisms, ay mamamatay din at wala silang hope for immortality. Ang life raw niya ay spark lamang sa isang infinite blackness. Spark siya kasi sandali lang siya mag-shine, pero mawawala siya agad and hindi na magpapakita forever. Dr. Craig gives a good description ng death na ito sa death ng universe. Ito yung natutunan ko kay Michio Kaku na known as the second law of thermodynamics. Ang sabi ni Dr. Kaku ay isa itong death warrant sa universe. Sure ito na mangyayari sa ating future. Ang pag-describe ni Dr. Craig dito ay ayon sa mga scientists ay ang universe ay nag-expand at ang galaxies ay nag-grow farther and farther apart. And as that happens, ang universe ay nag-grow to be colder and colder as the energy is being used up. Eventually ay mag-burn out ang mga stars, ang matter ay mag-collapse into dead stars at black holes. Mawawala na ang light, mawawala ang heat, mawawala ang life. And ang makikita ay corpses ng dead stars and galaxies. We see a cold universe in utter and endless darkness. This is our destiny if God does not intervene. Lahat ng pinaghirapan ng human race to improve life sa Earth throughout history ay mabubura and ito ay makakalimutan. Ang sabi ni Dr. Craig dito ay para tayong mga prisoners na condemned to death. Naghihintay lang tayo ng unavoidable na execution natin. Wala tayong escape. Wala tayong hope. In light ng picture na yon ng fate ng humanity and ng universe, ang question sa atin ngayon is kung ano ba yung ibig sabihin na walang ultimate meaning if God does not exist. Ang question ni Dr. Craig here is that kung ang tao ay merely nag-pass out of existence when he dies, then ano bang ultimate na meaning na pwede ibigay sa kanyang life? Pag-matter ba whether he existed or not? Of course, ang life niya ay pwede masabi to be important relative sa ibang mga events. Pero questionable kung ano bang ultimate significance ng mga events na yun. Kung lahat kasi ay mapunta rin naman sa destruction, then ano ang sense whether or not ay may na-influence tayo? It seems na walang difference. Dahil dito ay sabi ni Dr. Craig na it seems ng tao ay hindi more significant sa mosquitoes or sa mga pigs kasi ang end naman natin ay same as them. Ang blind na cosmic process na nag-cough up sa atin will swallow us again. Ang contributions ng isang scientist sa human knowledge, ang research ng doctor to alleviate pain and suffering, ang efforts ng isang diplomat to secure peace, at ang sacrifices ng mga mabuting tao ay mag-come to nothing. Ang horror ng modern man daw ay dahil we will end in nothing, ay we are nothing. Pero important for us to see na need natin ng more than immortality para maging meaningful ang life. Si Dr. Craig ay nag-give ng narrative to make a point na nakuha niya from a science fiction story. Basically, ay ang isang astronaut ay nasa isang barren na rock na naliligaw sa space. Ang astronaut na ito ay may 2 vials. Ang isa ay poison at ang isang vial will make him live forever. Dahil na-realize niya ang kanyang predicament ay ininom ng astronaut ang poison. Pero to his horror, ay maling vial pala ang nainom niya. Nainom niya ang potion for immortality at mabubuhay siya forever, living a meaningless life. Ito ang reason kung bakit hindi enough ang immortality at important din ang existence ni God para sa ultimate significance ng life. Question: have you ever felt the darkness of despair, that your life is meaningless? How did you cope? Answer: I have. I think ang feeling ko na ito ay evident when I think na helpless ako in changing my own situation. Ang mga nakatulong for me to cope sa hopelessness na ito ay when I am reminded of the truth of God's Word. Na-remind kasi ako to not look ultimately at myself, but on God who will help me through my situation. Ang company ng caring friends din have helped me through sa mga ganitong situations. Question: name some characters in films who have exemplified the absurdity of life. How do they convey the idea that life is absurd? Answer: I don't consider myself na very knowledgeable about sa mga films, so it's hard for me to pinpoint a particular character in mind. Ang pumapasok lang sa isip ko when I hear ang question na ito ay ang Waiting for Godot ni Samuel Beckett. Sa entire play kasi ay you can see two men na nag-carry ng isang trivial conversation habang naghihintay sila for a third man na dumating. Pero ang tao na ito ay never na dumating. Ang buhay daw natin ay parang ganun. Ang gusto ay parting ni Beckett ay that we just kill time waiting for something na hindi natin alam. Yun ang kanyang portrayal ng man. Ngayon naman, mag-move na tayo sa discussion sa kawalan ng ultimate value. So, ano ba yung sinabi ni Dr. Craig tungkol dito? Dito naman ay sabi ni Dr. Craig na if ang life natin ay mag-end sa ating death, then walang ultimate difference whether we lived as a Stalin or a Mother Teresa. Dahil ang destiny natin ay hindi related sa ating behavior, then we might as well live as we please. Dr. Craig cites si Fyodor Dostoevsky saying, if there is no immortality, then all things are permitted. He also quotes Richard Wurmbrand, isang pastor na tortured for his faith, saying, the cruelty of atheism is hard to believe when man has no faith in the reward of good or the punishment of evil. There is no reason to be human. There is no restraint from the depths of evil which is in man. The communist torturers often said, there is no God, no hereafter, no punishment for evil. We can do what we wish. I've heard one torturer even say, I thank God in whom I don't believe, that I have lived to this hour when I can express all the evil in my heart. He expressed it in unbelievable brutality and torture inflicted on prisoners. For this reason, ay sabi ni Dr. Craig na dahil sa finality ng death, then it doesn't really matter how we live our life. We cannot say sa tao na driven purely by self-interest na it is for their self-interest to live a moral life. Dahil we can think of situations na it's for their self-interest to do something immoral. Wala raw tayong objective reason kung bakit ang man should do something except for the pleasure na binibigay sa kanya ng isang bagay. At another problem is that kung hindi nag-exist si God, then wala tayong objective standard for right and wrong. Ang moral values lang natin ay expression ng ating personal taste or byproducts lang siya ng biological evolution and social conditioning. Sa atheistic view, ayon kay Dr. Craig, ay accidental byproducts lamang tayo ng nature na nag-evolve sa speck of dust na tinatawag na Earth, kung saan ay lost tayo sa isang mindless and hostile na universe na mamamatay eventually. He agrees kay Richard Dawkins as he cites him saying, there's at bottom no design, no purpose, no evil, no good, nothing but pointless indifference. We are machines for propagating DNA. It is every living object's sole reason for being. Kung wala si God, then sino ang dapat magdikta whether ang values natin ay right or wrong? Kung walang right and wrong, then what we have ay only ang personal preferences natin at ang cultural judgments natin. Ang ibig sabihin daw nito ayon kay Dr. Craig ay it would be impossible to condemn evil, war, and oppression, and also impossible to praise self-sacrifice, love, and generosity. Ang pag-kill at pag-love ay morally equivalent. Question: how would you live if you believe that humans are simply machines for propagating their DNA? Answer: It seems to me na if ang purpose ng humans ay merely to propagate their DNA, then ang magiging measure whether you have lived a good life ay depende kung gaano mo ka-efficiently napakalat ang iyong DNA. This seems to be dehumanizing and contrary sa morality na we understand. No ultimate purpose. Ngayon naman, mag-move na tayo sa discussion ng kawalan ng ultimate purpose. Anong sinabi ni Dr. Craig tungkol dito? Now, if si God ay hindi nag-exist and certain deaths ang naghintay sa atin sa end ng life, then ano ba ang goal ng life? May point ba ang living natin? May point ba ang existence ng universe? Kung ang destiny ng universe ay ang cold grave ng outer space, then ang answer ay ang life natin ay pointless. Walang goal at purpose ang universe at ang ating life. Dr. Craig cites ang English writer na si H.G. Wells sa novel niya na Time Machine. Ang isang time traveler ay nag-journey far into the future to see ang future destiny ng man. What he found is a dead earth, except for a few lichens and moss, at ang planet ay nag-orbit sa isang red na gigantic sun. Ang sounds na narinig lang niya ay rush ng wind at gentle ripple ng sea. Aside from that ay lifeless sounds na. Silent ang earth, walang sounds ng humans and sounds ng animals. Ang sabi ni Dr. Craig na what is true sa universe ay true for us din as individuals. If walang God, then ang life natin ay hindi qualitatively different from an animal. Dr. Craig quotes Ecclesiastes 3:19-20 saying, "The fate of the sons of men and the fate of beasts is the same. As one dies, so dies the other. Indeed, they all have the same breath, and there is no advantage for man over beast, for all is vanity. All go to the same place, all came from the dust, and all return to the dust." Ang ancient book daw na ito, which is like a modern existentialist literature, ay pinapakita ng author ng pleasure, wealth, fame, education, honor ay mawawala in death. And ang verdict ng author ay that everything is vanity. If ang life natin ay mag-end sa grave, then wala tayong ultimate purpose for living. Kung wala si God, ay ang universe ay result lang ng isang cosmic accident. Walang reason for it to exist. And dahil freak of nature lang ang man, then miscarriage lang tayo ng nature. Thrown tayo into a purposeless universe to live a purposeless life. Impossibility of living consistently and happily with an atheistic worldview. To start sa practical impossibility ng atheism, Dr. Craig mentions na ang offer ng atheist na solution is for us to face ang absurdity ng life and to live bravely. He cites the philosopher Bertrand Russell who says na wala tayong ibang choice but to live our lives sa firm foundation of unyielding despair. Another ay ang French existentialist na si Albert Camus. According to him ay dahil walang God, then life is absurd. Ang life ay hindi lamang meaningless, pero ito ay cruel din. This shows ng suicide lamang ang serious na philosophical na question. Pero despite sa absurdity ng life, ay Camus argued against suicide and for us to live a life na we must love one another. Ang problem dito ayon kay Dr. Craig is that ang solution shows na impossible for people to live consistently and happily within the framework of such a worldview. If maging consistent ka sa worldview mo, then you will not be happy. Pero if you live happily, ay hindi ka maging consistent. Dr. Craig cites ang Christian philosopher na si Francis Schaeffer. Ang modern man daw ay said to live in a two-story universe. Ang lower story ay ang finite world kung saan ay walang God, kung saan ang life ay absurd. Ang upper story naman ay kung saan makikita ang meaning, value, and purpose. Dahil nag-live ang man sa lower story, dahil he believes na si God ay hindi nag-exist, he cannot live happily sa isang absurd na world. What he does to overcome this ay nag-make siya ng leap of faith sa upper story para mag-affirm ng meaning, value, and purpose kahit wala siyang right for it dahil walang God. In view of this, let's talk again about meaning, value, and purpose in light of the practical impossibility ng atheism. Meaning of life. Dito ayon kay Dr. Craig, how do atheists like Sartre become inconsistent by insisting sa kanilang atheism? Doong implication ng life without ang existence ni God ay ang kawalan ng meaning, philosophers like Sartre argue na ang tao can still create meaning for themselves by choosing to follow a certain cause of action. Kay Sartre ay ito ang Marxism. Inconsistent ito kay Dr. Craig kasi walang basis si Sartre to make a leap sa upper story if si God ay hindi nag-exist. Hindi naman kasi magkakaroon ng objective meaning ang universe just because we decide to give it meaning ourselves. Marami kasing individual sa mundo. And for sure ay what would be meaningful for you would not be meaningful for another person. And sino mag-decide kung sino ang tama sa dalawa? Siyempre, wala talagang tama sa dalawa sa isang godless universe. And if objectively meaningless ang universe, then if we insist to put meaning to it, ang dating nito is like Sartre na nagpretend tayo ng universe to have meaning, which is basically a way of fooling ourselves. Para siyang crutch that helps us live through the cruel realities ng ating existence. Question: do you know anyone who thinks he can create his own meaning for his life? If so, how could you talk to him about whether this belief makes sense? Sa ngayon, ay wala akong maisip if may kakilala ako who thinks this way. Pero if meron man, I would try to show him na hindi siya coherent na worldview. Kasi we are the ones who decide kung anong meaning ng ating life, magkakaroon ng problem dahil pwede ng meaning na gusto natin would be something na would destroy what another person would find meaningful. And at the same time, ng meaningful sa iba would destroy what we would consider to be meaningful. And who is to decide kung kaninong meaning ang mas superior over the other? I think we can only get out of this problem if ang meaning is not subjective, but is something objective and discoverable. Dito, ayon kay Dr. Craig, how do atheists like Camus, Russell, Nietzsche, Sartre, and Dawkins become inconsistent by insisting sa kanilang atheism? Dito, ang point ni Dr. Craig ay if walang God na nag-exist, then walang objective na right and wrong. Tulad ng sabi ni Dostoevsky, ay everything ay permitted. Based dito, ay inconsistent for Camus to say na absurd ang life and dapat ay magmahalan tayo. Magiging inconsistent din si Russell for denouncing war and sa pag-go against sa restrictions sa sexual freedom. He even admitted pa na hindi niya kaya mag-live as if ang ethical values ay simply a matter of taste. He confesses na hindi niya raw alam ang solution dito. Si Nietzsche ay magiging inconsistent sa pag-broke off niya with his mentor na si Richard Wagner dahil sa kanyang anti-Semitism at German nationalism. Si Sartre would be inconsistent sa desire niya sa pag-value ng human persons, and si Richard Dawkins would be inconsistent to hate the abuse of homosexuals and also ang religious na indoctrination ng children if for him ay at the bottom ay walang evil at walang good, nothing but blind pitiless indifference. Dr. Craig shares a narrative that shows the horror of a life without God sa kwento ng isang former prisoner and nurse ng Auschwitz. Ang mga pregnant women daw ay grouped together under sa direction ni Dr. Joseph Mengele. Ang mga babae raw dito ay ginagamit ni Mengele for experimentation. Another woman daw ay said na bound up ang breasts niya para hindi makasuso sa kanyang baby. Ang reason for this ay gusto malaman ng doctor kung gaano ba katagal na makasurvive ang infant kung ito ay walang nourishment. Ang desperate na woman tried to make her baby alive by giving it pieces of bread na soaked in coffee. Pero wala nangyayari kasi each day nawawalan ng weight ang baby, which is something na weighed ni Dr. Mengele for each day. After nito ay may nurse na secretly pumasok at sinabihan ng nanay na she has a way for her to get out of the place. Pero hindi niya pwede masama ang kanyang baby. May dala ang nurse na morphine injection na pwede niya ibigay sa anak niya to end ang life nito. Nag-protest ang nanay, pero ang nurse ay nag-insist na mamamatay din naman ang baby. At least dapat isave niya ang kanyang sarili. This made the mother take yung life ng sarili niyang baby. At nagalit si Dr. Mengele na nawalan siya ng experimental na specimen. Nag-search pa raw siya among the dead corpses para mahanap niyang baby for one last weighing. If si God ay hindi nag-exist, ang mga ganitong bagay ay permitted. There is no right and wrong. Question: Why do you suppose that even smart atheists often don't care that their ideas about right and wrong are inconsistent? Answer. Ang hunch ko rito ay dahil ang mga tao ay hindi kilala si God would suppress ang truth in their unrighteousness, as is said sa Romans 1. May malaking tendency kasi ang isang tao to rationalize ang isang bagay based sa kanilang desires. Ang nangyayari kapag ganun is that they will get anything that they could use in order to justify their path or lifestyle, purpose of life. Dito, ayon kay Dr. Craig, how do atheists like Steven Weinberg become inconsistent by insisting sa kanilang atheism? Dito, mag-read ako ng quote from Steven Weinberg sa first 3 minutes. Quote, "It is almost irresistible for humans to believe that we have some special relation to the universe, that human life is not just a more or less farcical outcome of a chain of accidents reaching back to the first 3 minutes, but that somehow we were built in from the beginning. It is very hard to realize that this all is just a tiny part of an overwhelmingly hostile universe. It is even harder to realize that this present universe has evolved from an unspeakably unfamiliar early condition and faces a future extinction of endless cold or intolerable heat. The more the universe seems comprehensible, the more it also seems pointless. But if there is no solace in the fruits of our research, there is at least some consolation in the research itself. Men and women are not content to comfort themselves with tales of gods and giants, or to confine their thoughts to the daily affairs of life. They also build telescopes and satellites and accelerators and sit at their desks for endless hours, working out the meaning of the data they gather. The effort to understand the universe is one of the very few things that lifts human life a little above the level of farce, and it gives it some of the grace of tragedy." Makikita natin sa mismong quote niya na even though it seems pointless maglilid lahat sa extinction, bigla na lang nagkaroon ng grace sa tragedy kasi may consolation daw sa research mismo. Pero inconsistent ito kasi if maglilid lang naman sa death ang lahat, walang consolation na magagawa talaga ang research itself. Kasi kahit anong pinaghirapan natin, masasayang lang ang lahat. In light of these 3 examples kung saan impossible practically to live atheism, hindi sufficient ang atheistic na worldview to live a happy and consistent life. If we live consistently ay hindi tayo happy dahil sa kawalan ng objective meaning, value, and purpose. And if we live happily ay tayo ay magiging inconsistent. Dahil sa dilemma na ito ay ang modern man ay naghanap ng way of escape. And Dr. Craig cites si Dr. L.D. Rue na nag-advocate for the noble lie. Ang musing ni Dr. Rue ay consequence ng intellectual and moral relativism ay ang quest for personal wholeness at social coherence ay independent from each other. Ito ay dahil sa relativism, ang self-fulfillment ay privatized at ang bawat tao ay ang namimili ng kanyang sariling values and meaning. Ito ang sabi niya, "There is no final objective reading on the world or the self. There is no universal vocabulary for integrating cosmology and morality. If we are to avoid the madhouse option where self-fulfillment is pursued regardless of social coherence, and the totalitarian option where social coherence is imposed at the expense of personal wholeness, then we have no choice but to embrace some noble lie that will inspire us to live beyond selfish interests and so achieve social coherence. A noble lie is one that deceives us, tricks us, compels us beyond self-interest, beyond ego, beyond family, nation, and race." Sabi ni Dr. Craig na dreadful ito na verdict sa modern man. Dahil para makasurvive tayo, ay we need to live in self-deception. Ang Christian worldview provides a framework that we are both happy and consistent. Now natapos na tayo sa practical impossibility ng atheism, we will now talk about how biblical Christianity gives us a framework about being happy and consistent. Dito naman ay bago kami nag-proceed, I let yung participants share about what they have read about Dr. Craig's testimony. In order to satisfy ang inyong curiosity, I will be the one to share ang testimony na ito. Sa book ay nag-share si Dr. Craig ng story niya about sa meaninglessness and despair ng life ng kanyang nararamdaman. He shared na lumaki siya sa isang loving na home pero hindi sila religious na family. Nung naging teenager daw siya ay nag-start na siya to ask ang mga big questions ng life tulad ng kung sino ba tayo, bakit tayo nandito, and kung saan ba tayo papunta. Dahil sa pag-search ni Dr. Craig for answers ay nag-start siya mag-attend ng isang malaking church sa kanilang community. Imbes na answers ang nakuha niya, ay nakita niya is parang isang social country club kung saan ay nagbigay ang mga tao ng $1 a week sa offering plate. Ang ibang mga high school students daw na involved sa youth group ay nag-profess daw ng allegiance kay Christ. Pero ang real God daw nila for the rest of the week ay for them to be popular. Ito raw ay nag-bother kay Dr. Craig kasi he seems to live a better life compared sa mga nag-profess to know Christ. Nevertheless, I felt so empty inside. So inisip niya na baka mga Christians na ito feel as empty as he is. And that baka nagpretend lang sila to be something na hindi sila. Ang inisip ni Dr. Craig is that isa lamang silang mga hypocrites. Dahil dito ay naging bitter si Dr. Craig sa church. Ang sa isip niya ay walang genuine na tao inside na sila ay takot na maging totoo sa kanilang sarili. And dahil dito ay Dr. Craig despised people. Dahil dito ay ayaw ni Dr. Craig to be with people. Ang iniisip niya ay hindi niya sila kailangan. At dahil doon ay nag-focus siya sa studies niya. And dahil sa kanyang alienation, ay he realized na deep down ay need niya ng love from other people. Dito niya naisip na hindi rin siya genuine and phony siya like ang mga tao na he despised sa church. Kasi nagpretend siya na hindi niya need ng tao. Pero deep down ay alam niya na need niya talaga ng tao. Dahil dito ay he began to hate himself and this made him miserable. Ang naging turning point sa life niya is when he went to a German class in high school. May babae siya na na-meet na masayahin. And medyo na-trigger si Dr. Craig sa babae na yon as a result. Dahil dito ay kinausap niya ang girl na ito and asked her kung bakit ba siya laging masaya. Ang answer sa kanya ng kanyang classmate is that dahil siya ay saved. Ang babae clarified na alam niya na si Jesus ang kanyang personal savior. Ang response ni Dr. Craig is that he goes to church. Then ang babae ay nag-respond na hindi yun enough. Dapat daw ay si Jesus ay nag-live sa kanyang heart. And hindi yun ma-take ni Dr. Craig. Nag-demand siya sa babae asking kung bakit ba magkakaroon ng paki si God na he would want to be in his heart. Ang sagot ng babae is that dahil love siya ni God. Na-move raw si Dr. Craig sa sagot na yon dahil mayroong isang being na nag-love sa kanya and ito ay ang God ng universe. And dahil dito ay na-move si Dr. Craig to study ang buong New Testament and na-captivate si Dr. Craig kay Jesus. And he noticed na may wisdom sa teachings niya na never niya na-encounter before. And that may authenticity daw kay Jesus na hindi niya nakita sa mga Christians na na-encounter niya. And yung girl na nag-share sa kanya ng gospel introduced him to other Christians na passionate rin for the Lord. This led him to cry out kay God later on dahil sa kanyang anger and bitterness. And finally, he felt joy na never niya na-feel sa kanyang life. May this testimony encourage us sa pag-share ng gospel sa mga tao na dinadala ni God sa buhay natin. Question: do you have a deep sense that your life matters? If so, what gives you that sense? If not, why do you suppose you don't? Answer: yes. Aside sa feeling na nag-flow out from my being, ito rin ang sinasabi mismo ng word ni God. Now, ang question ko is that ano bang two conditions na binibigay ng biblical Christianity na necessary para magkaroon ng meaning, value, and purpose ang life? Answer: God and immortality. If naalala niyo yung story about sa astronaut na nakainom ng vial na nag-give ng immortality, it's clear na hindi siya enough in order for our lives to be meaningful. Kailangan din natin si God na mag-exist para ma-live natin ang life natin objectively with meaning, value, and purpose. In summary, we discussed ang reductio ad absurdum na if si God ay hindi nag-exist and ang life ay nag-end in death, then walang objective meaning, value, and purpose in life. Walang objective meaning kasi kung walang immortality ay walang ultimate significance dahil walang difference naman sa outcome ng world. At dahil walang God ay walang broad framework kung saan makita natin na nagmatter ang life natin as humans. Walang objective value kasi kung walang immortality ay walang moral accountability. Ang moral choices natin then becomes inconsequential. Kung walang God, ay ang moral values natin ay delusions lamang na ingrained sa atin ng evolution and social conditioning. Walang objective na purpose kasi ang destination natin ay extinction at death. Without God ay wala yung purpose kung bakit tayo nag-start to exist in this world. We also discussed na possible to live as an atheist happily and be consistent, and that we also discussed na impossible to live as an atheist happily and be consistent, and that ang biblical Christianity ay nag-affirm ng two conditions na necessary para magkaroon ng objective meaning, value, and purpose, which is ang God and immortality. Hence, ay sa biblical Christianity ay may framework tayo in living happily and consistently. For this reason, though hindi pa tayo nag-discuss about evidence, we have good reasons to think and desire why Christianity should be true. It is my hope na we see today na ang question ng existence ni God ay may profound na consequences, and that sana hindi natin kaya na maging indifferent sa question.